Our story begins in the Elfrieden kingdom where we see some mages performing a summoning ritual, probably to save their kingdom from a demon army. The summoning circle activates, covering the kingdom with a ray of light, and Soma, a 19-year-old orphan who was at a library, is summoned. I guess Truck-kun was on vacation for this one. They bring Soma to meet King Albert, who thanks him for answering their call. Soma gets annoyed by this, saying he didn't answer a call, he just got dragged into this world against his will, but decides to listen to what they have to say. 10 years ago, a void opened, and monsters began arriving from the demon world. I knew it, causing a war to erupt. The country united to fight the monsters but ended up losing, and the monsters took control of 1/3 of the country, creating the demon lord's domain. Soma learns that instead of expecting him to be the hero who slays the Demon King's army, they intend to send him to the Grand Chaos Empire as their contribution to the war effort. The Grand Chaos Empire shares a large border with the Demon Lord's domain, making them one of the main armies that fights the demons. Because of this, they require financial support from kingdoms like Elfrieden, who do not share borders with the demons. Annoyed at the thought of being dissected or worse, Soma demands to see their finances, hoping to improve them and strengthen the kingdom, so he won't have to be sent to the empire. Soma, Prime Minister Marx, and King Albert review the kingdom's finances over the next 3 days, trying to figure out where to start. When this is done, King Albert decides to abdicate the throne, transferring the title of king to Soma and arranging for Soma to marry his daughter Liscia. The news quickly spreads to the 3 dukes that lead the kingdom's armed forces, Vargas, Walter, and Carmine, surprising them, and Liscia rushes home thinking her parents must be in danger. However, when she arrives, she finds her parents enjoying retirement. Liscia becomes enraged, demanding an explanation, and Albert explains that Soma is the type of king the kingdom needs and that it's up to her to decide if she wants to marry him, but suggests that she at least meet him before deciding. When Liscia arrives at his office, she is shocked. She had expected to find a giga-chad of a man, but instead finds a boy buried in paperwork. Soma, however, is just thankful to have someone who can help out. Liscia reveals she is the princess he is supposed to marry, but Soma doesn't care, asking her to get started on a stack of papers. Liscia interrogates him, asking if he can really fix the kingdom's finances in a few years and what he plans to do about the financial aid requested by the empire. Soma responds, saying he had already secured the money for the empire by selling national treasures and that he intends to pay the empire the last possible day. While taking a break, Soma gets approached by a mage wanting him to take a magic test to see if he had been given any magic during his summoning. Soma is taken to a small gargoyle statue that is used to detect magic, and when he touches it, the statue begins to glow, confirming the presence of magic within him. However, Soma just hopes that the magic will have some practical use. Later, Liscia enters Soma's office and is surprised to find a group of people working. As she approaches Soma's desk, she notices pens moving on their own, writing documents, and Soma explains that he is able to use magic, allowing him to deal with paperwork faster. Liscia then asks about the people in his office, and Soma explains that they are there to help find any untapped money, wasted expenses, or misappropriation disguised as investments. If any missing money is found, the responsible parties will be told to return the missing amount or be arrested. He explains that even though they already have enough money to pay the empire, they can never have enough money or manpower, so he makes Liscia help with the paperwork. The next day during breakfast, Soma suggests their first step should be limiting the planting of cotton, instead focusing on growing soybeans and potatoes as they can handle the warm weather while solving the food shortage. After breakfast, Soma decides to use the gemstone broadcast system address the whole kingdom. During his speech, Soma invites anyone with a talent that can help the kingdom to apply to become an advisor. Across the kingdom, people start to pack their bags and head for the capital. A few days later, a ceremony is held to honor the 5 people chosen to be Soma's new advisors. Upon meeting the king, one of the 5 refuses to bow, stating her tribe only bows to their master, which angers the captain of the guard, Ludwin. Soma calms him down, stating that he invited them so they can honor her customs. The girl who refused to bow is Aisha Udgard, a dark elf. Soma uses his living poltergeist magic to learn more about the dark elves, while Marx reveals that she is the best fighter in the kingdom. Aisha then asks that she not be given the reward. Instead, she only wants Soma to help her village, which has a tree growth problem. Soma easily helps by suggesting they try thinning out the forest to promote sapling growth. This knowledge brings Aisha to her knees, and she offers to become his concubine. I sense a harem starting. Second is Juna Dama, and Marx explains that she is the most beautiful girl with the best voice in the kingdom. Hearing this, Soma asks her if she could sing a song for the kingdom, who is watching on the broadcast system. He then takes out his phone and gives her headphones, playing a song from his world. Juna begins to sing, and when she is finished the whole kingdom begins to praise her. Next is Pancho Panicotta, and Marx reveals that his talent is eating, clearly, and that his gluttony had led him all over the world trying every dish possible. Hearing this, Soma becomes excited, saying his gluttony could save the kingdom, and grants him the title of Ishizuka, a master of cuisine. Fourth to come forward is Hakuya Kwonman. Marx explains he was the only one nominated for the position due to his intellect, and it is believed his knowledge and memory are the best in the kingdom. Hearing this, Soma asks him to become his right-hand man. Finally, a small beast girl named Tomo and Yui steps forward. Marx reveals her talent allows her to converse with animals. She tries to say something to Soma, but he couldn't hear her, so he goes to her, and she whispers something which shocks him. This concludes the ceremony, and Soma thanks all of them for answering his call. Back in his office, Soma, Liscia, Marx, and Ludwin meet with Tomo, and Soma reveals that Tomo can also speak with demons. Shocked, the other three demand that she explains, and Tomo recalls an instance where she ran into a demon while picking flowers, and when she called for help the demon was shocked. He could understand her, and that the demon let her go, explaining he couldn't kill an innocent girl. When she is done explaining, Soma explains that if another kingdom found out about her talent, they could use it to their advantage and potentially form alliances with the demons. Soma then orders the royal guard to protect her as a national treasure. A few days later, Soma is informed of Pancho's return and goes to meet him with Liscia. Pancho informs Soma that he managed to get all the food he was after. Soma intends to use the broadcast system along with Pancho and Juna to introduce new foods and show how to prepare them to help fight the food shortage. Basically, a cooking show. A week later, Marx requests to speak with Soma, revealing that he will be stepping down as the Prime Minister, wanting Hakuya to take his place. Soma agrees to this on the condition that Marx stays on as his court advisor. Hakuya then makes a request that Soma take a day off, suggesting Soma and Liscia go on a date to increase their affection for one another. Soma agrees reluctantly and goes to inform Liscia of the plans. He eventually finds her in the courtyard sparring with Aisha. Liscia is shocked when she hears about the date, but she agrees, and the two head into town disguised as students with Aisha as their escort. The three enjoy their time in the village but eventually get hungry and decide to stop into Juna's cafe for lunch. While eating, Soma comments on Aisha's appetite, leading her to become worried that her appetite is the reason why Soma won't bet her. Flustered, Soma denies this, stating he is engaged, which leads Liscia to tell him that having multiple wives is encouraged in Elfrieden, meaning he could build his harem freely. But Liscia also informs him she will only allow him to have 7 wives plus her. Rough. Just then Soma overhears a fox girl arguing with a fellow soldier. Liscia tells Soma that the fox girl's name is Kide Foxia, and the soldier across from her is Halbert Magna. Kide is busy telling Halbert not to go see Carmine because he is defying the new king, which could result in a civil war. But Halbert states that he wants to switch sides because it will be his chance to make his mark on the world. The total military force in Elfrieden is 100,000. 40,000 belongs to Duke Carmine's army, 10,000 belongs to Duchess Walter's navy, 1,000 belongs to Duke Varga's air force, and 40,000 belongs to the king's forbidden army. The remaining numbers are usually made up of mercenaries from Zem contracted to the forbidden army, but their contract was ended because mercenaries readily changed sides, which Soma believed would do more harm than good. Recently, Soma had tried to reach out to the 3 dukes, but they had all left him on red. Kide begs Halbert to listen to reason, saying that a war would only benefit the neighboring kingdoms who want Elfrieden land for themselves. Hearing this reminds Soma of a conversation he had with Hakuya, in which Hakuya had informed Soma that of the 5 kingdoms surrounding Elfrieden, 4 were neutral, and 1 was hostile. The hostile kingdom is Amadonia, who had offered the 3 dukes reinforcements to help them overthrow Elfrieden so they could reclaim the land that was taken from them years ago. Halbert doesn't want to listen because he does not trust the new king and believes Carmine must have a plan because he is a battle-tested hero. Suddenly, Soma joins their conversation, asking Kide why she believes in the new king so much, and Kide explains that the strength of an army depends on the quality of its soldiers and supplies, just like the strength of a nation depends on its people and supplies. Before she continues, however, she realizes she is speaking with the king and begins to panic. In another room, Soma's group sits with Kide and Halbert to continue their conversation. Kide asks if they are going to be arrested, but Soma assures her that they won't. Just then Halbert begins to yell at Kide and makes a move towards Soma, but before he can blink, Aisha has him by the head and he is forced to calm down. Halbert suddenly realizes that Soma is actually the king he had been disrespecting, and he begins to panic. Soma then asks if Halbert understands that joining Carmine would make him and Kide enemies and that eventually they would have to fight one another. Hearing this, Halbert gives up on his plan to join Carmine and they go their separate ways. Back at the castle, Soma is informed that Glaive Magna, Halbert, and Kide were there to see him. When he meets with them, Soma sees that Halbert has received some tough love from his father, who apologizes on behalf of his idiot son. The conversation continues and Soma decides to make Kide a staff officer of the Royal Guard. He then assigns Halbert to the Forbidden Army to become Kide's assistant. Glaive then requests to speak with Soma alone. Soma agrees, and when the room has been cleared, Glaive says what is on his mind, probably some suggestions for his harem. Later, Soma decides to do some adventuring. Using his living poltergeist, he sends his ninja doll to the Adventurers Guild, where he joins up with a group taking on a beginner quest to explore the tunnels under Elfrieden. While the group is exploring, they come across a few monsters, but Soma easily takes care of them. Further in the tunnels, however, the group comes across a large salamander that is resistant to fire magic and spits acidic saliva. The group realizes they are outmatched and decide to run when Soma trips. Seeing this, one of the girl adventurers comes back to help him using a bomb to stun the salamander. The salamander begins to thrash around, spraying saliva all over, and Soma jumps on the girl to prevent her from getting burned. The group manages to escape, and the girl thanks Soma for saving her. Back in the castle, Soma washes his doll, thankful that he had chosen to add acid resistance to it. Liscia comes in the room and notes that his doll is much larger than before, and Soma admits he had it made he could go adventuring from the comfort of his throne. This makes Liscia realize the famous adventurer she had been hearing about was actually just a doll, which disappoints her. Days later, Soma gathers his workers and thanks them for all their hard work, saying they were finally ready to start Project Vanity Nova. Vanity Nova is a new port city that Soma plans to make the biggest bay city in all of Elfrieden. Liscia is confused by this, pointing out that they already have Lagoon City, which Walter controls. She then questions if Soma plans to go to war with Walter. Soma denies this, explaining that while building Vanity Nova, they will also build roads to neighboring cities, allowing Elfrieden to control both maritime and land shipping, making the distribution of supplies faster. The next morning, Soma makes his way to the future location of Vanity Nova, where he meets with Ludwin. While inspecting the land, Soma questions why it has been vacant all this time, and Ludwin tells him this is due to a village further inland insisting nothing be built on the land because it belongs to the god of the sea, Cajun, and by building on it they could suffer his wrath. Hearing this, Soma decides to visit the village. When he arrives, he meets with the village elder, Oru. Soma asks him to explain more about the sea god, and Oru tells him about the monster who came and destroyed the new houses they had built on the land years ago. Soma then asks Oru to show him on a map just how large the monster's territory was. When the old man has left, Soma reveals to his group that he believes the monster isn't a monster at all, just a tsunami. However, Soma still takes this news seriously, changing the city's location to avoid any future tsunamis that could occur. A week later, Soma checks in on the road construction and meets with Kide, who, along with the Forbidden Army, has been working alongside the citizens to complete the roads. Liscia questions the use of lamps on the road, and Kide explains to her that the lamps filled with light moss will allow for overnight deliveries of supplies, increasing the volume they can bring into the kingdom. Just then a messenger bird arrives, giving a note to Aisha. Aisha reads the note and explains to the group that it was from Chief Wadden, her father, requesting aid because a landslide had occurred, taking out half the village. Soma decides to send a group to the village to try and rescue as many elves as possible, while Liscia would go back to the capital and have Hakuya send relief supplies to the village. When the group arrives at the Dark Elf village, they meet with her father, and he tells them that they have already found 100 elves dead and that there were still 40 missing. Soma creates a plan requesting a list of the 40 elves still missing. He then tells his group to search the debris, listening for any sounds as they go. Wadden then tells Soma he has men on watch in the event another slide starts, and Soma tells the group to evacuate if a second slide occurs, even if they are mid-rescue. Wadden then asks Aisha to get her old friends, as they would be vital in the rescue effort due to their knowledge of the land. The group begins the rescue effort, and Soma uses his magic to control a wooden mouse to search the places where people wouldn't fit. The tactic works, and Soma informs Halbert he has found a survivor under a tree, which shocks Halbert. Suddenly, Soma begins throwing up, and when Halbert goes to check on him, Soma explains that the mouse had found a badly mangled body. Eventually, Soma and Wadden meet and discuss the next steps for the village, as they had found the remaining 40 elves, and even though some of them were dead, they still needed to tend to the wounded and begin building a temporary village. Just then Aisha arrives, telling Soma that Liscia had arrived with the relief supplies he had requested. A few days later, the three dukes gather in Randall to have a meeting. Vargas states they need to start their rebellion before Soma can finish with his plans for the kingdom, and Walter questions if rebelling against Soma is still a good idea even though she had also refused to assist Soma. She states her priority is the safety of Lagoon City. Walter then brings up the letter they had received from Amadonia, saying they probably shouldn't rely on them because they would have sent the same letter to Soma and will only help whoever gives them the best deal. Walter then asks why Carmine turned his back on the new king considering his usual loyalty to the crown, and Carmine explains that he doesn't think Soma is fit to rule the kingdom. Walter gets confused by this, bringing up all that Soma has already done for the kingdom, and she asks if Carmine is just looking to take the throne for himself. Carmine denies this, saying he wants King Albert to retake the throne once they get rid of Soma. Just then Carla, Vargas' sister, bursts in saying she is ready to fight because Soma had violated Liscia and forced the king to surrender the crown. Carla then reveals she has already accepted the offer from Amadonia. Meanwhile, in Amadonia, Gaius is reading the letter from Carla, who had signed it as Carmine, and Gaius comments that Carmine must be getting old because in years past he would have rejected the offer. Gaius then tells his son Julius to send reinforcements to both the king and the dukes. Gaius prepares his troops to invade the minute Carmine starts the rebellion. The domestic affairs minister, Colbert, begs Gaius to reconsider his plan as it will lead to the people's starvation. Gaius just kicks him, saying that ministers have to say that to cover their ass. Colbert then says that if they invade Elfrieden, Amadonia will be open to attacks from the demons. Gaius has heard enough and prepares to draw his sword, but Julius steps in and says that Colbert is worrying over trivial things. Gaius then channels his inner Trump and tells Colbert he is fired. Meanwhile, Soma finally meets with the three dukes. Once they have introduced themselves, Soma announces their options: continue to disobey and be considered traitors, or join him and he will forget they turned their backs on him. Walter asks what Soma has planned for the three of them, and Soma states he wants to combine their forces with the Forbidden Army to create a new united force. Soma explains that he believes that the neighboring kingdoms are ready to attack, and having multiple armies scattered around the kingdom will be useless. Vargas argues that the main power controlling the army could become corrupt, but Soma assures him that will not happen, saying he can take his head if it does. Walter then asks him about his new city and what it will mean for Lagoon City. Soma explains that Vanity Nova will only serve as a trade port and vacation destination, meaning Lagoon City will stay as the naval port. Relieved, Walter states that her and her navy will join Soma's new army. Soma turns to Vargas asking him to do the same, but Vargas says he is going to remain neutral for the time being, other than the 100 dragon knights he sent to help Carmine. Soma then addresses Carmine, saying he won't bother asking if he will join because it was clear he was a traitor when he took in the criminal nobles. Soma then asks why Carmine chose to do these things. Carmine responds saying he acted this way because of his pride as a warrior, and that he sees this as a rare opportunity to have a say in what direction the kingdom will go. Hearing this, Soma makes a request before starting their battle. He asks that to avoid mass casualties, that the battle end when either of the commanders is captured or killed. Both Carmine and Vargas agree to this and prepare to leave, but before they can, Liscia calls to them and cuts her hair to show her commitment to help Soma or something. I don't know. Soma apologizes to Walter, saying he had hoped Vargas would have joined them. Walter doesn't mind though, saying it was his decision to side with Carmine. Hakuya then arrives to inform Soma that 30,000 troops from Amadonia are moving through a mountain pass and will likely try to take the city of Altamura. When Gaius reaches Altamura, he meets with Weiss, the lord of Altamura, and comments that the soil is rich and should be able to supply plenty for Amadonia. Weiss then bows before Gaius, saying Altamura will let him take over peacefully, but first he would need time to convince the citizens to open the gates. He explains that currently half the city wants to surrender while the other half wants to fight. Gaius gives him to the end of the day, and when Weiss leaves, he speaks with Julius, saying that they will take the city by force because he believes Carmine's army will keep Soma busy, so he won't be able to send help. Meanwhile, Soma had his army build a fortress near the city of Randall while he met with the dukes, and currently they are engaged in a battle with some of Carmine's army. Hide and Halbert are stationed there to defend the fortress and hold up well until the enemy brings in cannons and start to deal heavy damage to the fortress. Suddenly a dark elf from Aisha's village arrives and begins shooting the cannonballs before they can hit the fortress. Ludwin then calls for the gates to be opened so he and the Forbidden Army can take out the cannons. Back in Randall Castle, the corrupt nobles speak with Carmine, voicing their concerns they might lose the battle. Carmine becomes angry hearing this and reminds them they outnumber the king 4-1 and cannot lose. However, he also notes that Soma must not be in the fortress because they are only defending their position, whereas Soma would have had them attack if he was there. In Altamura, Gaius prepares to attack when a soldier approaches saying Weiss wishes to speak with him. Gaius meets with Weiss, who offers him bags of gold, begging him to hold off his attack until noon the next day because he had not yet convinced the citizens to surrender. Annoyed, Gaius reluctantly accepts the offering, saying his army will burn the city down if they do not surrender by tomorrow. In the Altamura fortress, Weiss speaks with Walter, who has been hiding in Altamura the whole time, and questions if they were making the right decision handing over their gold instead of buying mercenaries with it. Walter reminds him that mercenaries only serve whoever pays the most, and currently time is their only ally, so they had to spend some money to gain as much time as possible. Back at the fortress, and Randall Kide comments that the army Carmine had sent had gotten smaller, leading her to believe that Carmine expected this battle to continue for days. Halbert interrupts her as he spots a group of wyverns approaching them. The previous night in Red Dragon City, Vargas is informed by his right hand, Tolman, that everyone had been evacuated and that only army personnel were left. Vargas had started to rethink his opinion of the new king and his position in the war, saying he didn't mind helping Carmine but disliked the idea of helping the corrupt nobles, so he tells Tolman to deny any requests from his men to join the 100 he had already sent to Carmine. Tolman then reports that the Forbidden Army had been seen moving towards Carmine, making it a possibility that the king had overlooked his decision to aid Carmine. Vargas finds this hard to believe, as the smartest move would be to first defeat him and claim the air force, then attack Carmine. Carla enters and informs Vargas that a single ship on wheels being pulled by beasts had been spotted heading towards the castle. The ship begins to attack and Soma contacts Vargas, offering him one last chance to change his mind. Vargas refuses, saying even if he wanted to change sides he couldn't because he had already promised to help Carmine. Meanwhile, Carla leads the Wyvern Knights towards the ship, preparing to bomb the cannons, but Soma had prepared for this and uses bolt throwers to hold them off. This surprises Carla because usually weapons like these were only used to defend castles. A soldier then suggests they attack the wheels in order to immobilize the ship. But Carla rejects this idea, thinking Liscia may be on board and that she may never forgive Carla if she killed Soma. Frustrated with this dilemma, Carla wishes she would have tried to change her brother's mind, blaming herself for being a hothead. She said it, not me. Carla decides that it's too late to turn back, so she tells her soldiers to fly in and attack the wheels. I mean, seriously, just make up your mind. The knights manage to destroy the wheels and take out the cannons in the process, but the victory is short-lived as Carla notices that there are no people on the ship, just a puppet who is being used to control the cannons. Realizing she had been played, Carla orders her knights to return to the castle. However, it is too late. Using the massive library at his disposal, Soma had managed to find blueprints of the city and had already infiltrated the castle using the secret underground tunnels. Finally, face to face, Vargas and Soma reintroduce themselves. Soma asks Vargas to surrender, but Vargas has no intentions of giving up, so he draws his sword and Aisha steps up to duel with him. The duel begins, and because this is war, Soma sends his ninja doll to help Aisha. Vargas prepares to block the attack, but Liscia jumps out of the doll using ice magic to freeze Vargas in place while Aisha delivers the final blow. Vargas admits defeat and Liscia approaches him, revealing a slave collar. As she put it on him, she explains that the collar makes Soma his master and that if he tries to disobey or harm Soma, the collar will kill him. Suddenly, Carla bursts in the room and sees her brother laying on the ground with his new jewelry. She prepares to attack, but Liscia warns her that doing so would kill her brother, so instead she simply kneels and accepts some new jewelry of her own. Soma then grants Tolman temporary command of the Air Force and orders him to take the Air Force and join the Forbidden Army. Tolman agrees but wonders what will become of Vargas and Carla, and Soma reassures him that their case will be reviewed once the war is over. Back in the present, Kide and Halbert are relieved to find that they must have won the gamble because the Air Force simply flies over the fortress instead of attacking. Inside the fortress, Soma meets with Kide, Halbert, and Ludwin to discuss their next move. In Randall Castle, the corrupt nobles inform him that the Air Force has been lost and wonder what they should do next. Carmine ignores them, asking Beowulf for a status report. After hearing the damages and number of hostages taken, Carmine admits that they have been outsmarted and ultimately defeated. The nobles can't understand how this is possible as their army was virtually untouched, and they suggest using the civilians as human shields while they plan their escape. Disgusted by the suggestion, Carmine has them put into slave collars before asking Beowulf to put one on himself. Carmine then surrenders, taking full responsibility for the actions of him and his men. Later, as Carmine opens a gift of wine he had received from the previous king to drink and mourn his loss, Beowulf enters, informing him that Soma has requested that Carmine's army follow the Forbidden Army, which was heading west. Carmen realizes Soma must be going for an even bigger prize and celebrates finally accepting the new king. In a flashback we see that Halbert's father Glaive had requested an audience with Soma to tell him that Carmine intended to gather all the corrupt nobles and stage a rebellion in order to have Soma get rid of them for good because he believed that would continue to cause problems for the kingdom. Back in Altamura, Gaius announces that the time had come for them to attack, but before he can give the order, Walter appears on the city wall and uses her magic to create a screen on which Soma appears to address the kingdom. Soma announces that Duke Vargas and Duke Carmine have been defeated, meaning the civil war was officially over. He then goes on to declare war on the kingdom of Amadonia, explaining that Amadonia had tried to use the civil war to take back land they had lost years ago by taking advantage of the bad blood between the dukes and the new king. He continues saying these actions are unacceptable given they are currently at war with the demon's army and should be working together to defeat their common enemy. Finally, Soma reveals that his army is currently heading for Amadonia to take the capital city of Vaughn. Aurora receives the news of the impending attack, and that Gaius had returned to Vaughn. She becomes agitated, however, because she knows the shortest route to Vaughn is through the mountain pass, which they would have had to travel through at night, where they would have been ambushed by Soma. Her butler Gaxby confirms this, saying of the 30,000 that entered the pass, only 15,000 had made it through to the other side. Gaius arrives just outside Vaughn to find Elfrieden soldiers waiting for them, and he assumes Vaughn has fallen, but Julius points out that Vaughn isn't burning, and the castle flags had not yet changed to Elfrieden flags, so perhaps there was still hope to save Vaughn. Gaius is encouraged by this and rallies his men, demanding they fight for their kingdom. The battle starts and Gaius asks Julius to escape and save himself, but Julius doesn't want to leave Gaius behind. Gaius explains that he can't run because he is the one the king is after, so no matter where he goes, they will continue to hunt him. Soma receives word that Gaius is heading straight toward him, and Carla asks him to order her to meet him in combat, saying she wants to do her part to defend Liscia. Soma agrees to her request, and she takes off toward Gaius. However, Ludwin is already fighting Gaius and swiftly lands a finishing blow, but soon realizes he has only slain a doppelganger. Carla reaches Gaius and the two begin to fight. Gaius proves to be a strong opponent, though forcing Carla to her knees. Suddenly Soma's ninja doll appears, and Gaius has to focus his attention on it. Soma appears on the battlefield and Gaius charges at him, but he is tackled by the doll. Soma then orders Carla to blast the doll with her fire magic. She does this, and the doll explodes. As the dust settles, Gaius is seen still standing with his armor badly damaged. He continues on his path towards Soma, but he is stopped by a barrage of arrows. Even through all this, Gaius still manages to throw his sword at Soma, but it falls just short as Gaius collapses, taking his last breaths. Inside the city of Vaughn, Roroa cries as she is informed of her father's death, saying he was a fool until the very end. The next day, Soma sits in his newly acquired castle and receives reports from Ludwin and Glaive. Ludwin reports that in the wake of Gaius' death and their takeover, Julius had fled west and Roroa had left with the finance minister and a few other key officials. Glaive then reports that the army is in good spirits after their victory, and that they could easily continue and conquer the rest of Amadonia if they wanted. Soma rejects this idea, explaining they will not take any more of Amadonia due to the Mankind Declaration. The Grand Chaos Empire used to be the greatest kingdom. Its size, military might, technology, and riches were unmatched until the demons arrived, and the Demon Lord's domain was created. Seeing a change in power, the Empire took the lead for the side of mankind and created the Mankind Declaration to unite the human kingdoms against the demons, realizing this was the only way they would stand a chance of surviving. In the Grand Chaos Empire, Jean Euphoria visits her sister, Queen Maria Euphoria, and informs her that she will be leaving for Vaughn in order to try and negotiate with Soma to give Vaughn back to the people of Amadonia. Maria agrees with this plan, confirming that the Mankind Declaration will be broken if Soma chooses to keep Vaughn under Elfrieden control. Back in Vaughn, Hakuya informs Soma that an army of 50,000 soldiers is on its way to them and that an advance party was already almost at Vaughn. Soma decides to head into town with Juna and Tomo to enjoy the festival, which had begun as a show of thanks to Soma for creating peace between Amadonia and Elfrieden. After doing some shopping, the trio decides to find a spot to relax for a while. They find a nice spot, but just as they begin to unwind, they are approached by Jean. Juna prepares to fight, but Jean stops her, saying she has come peacefully to see the king. Jean then apologizes for tearing Soma away from his world before admitting they didn't think it would actually work. Soma asks who she is, and she introduces herself before commenting that she is impressed with all that he has done in his short time as king, noting that she is especially impressed with the progress of his harem. That is where the story ends. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next recap.